Hey guys, it's Keller, my review for the season premiere, the final season of Legion, Season 3, Episode 1, Chapter 20, and obviously coming into this episode, I was very excited to see how things would play out, but I was also a little bit worried, because considering the huge, just complete heel turn of events that we got in the finale, I just did not know how they were possibly going to follow it up. I didn't really know how the show is going to be. The entire premise of the show has completely changed at this point, and I just did not know how they were going to be able to execute this idea. However, I have to say, if this premiere is any indication of what this final season is going to be, this has the potential to be maybe the best season of Legion yet, because I adored this premiere. In fact, I think this might be one of the best episodes that Legion has done, period. I think there was so much great stuff about this episode. There was so much I really did love about it. But we're just getting into right now. Now, while I really did adore this episode, there isn't really a ton to talk about here concerning the main narrative, because most of this episode wisely devotes most of its runtime to a character that we actually are not exposed to yet, which I thought was a really cool idea. They could have easily opened this up, you know, with seeing David and seeing Lenny and them going on the run and them trying to, you know, get away from Division 3 and things like that and starting their own life. But this is Legion. Legion has never been a show with a conventional narrative. If this was a conventional narrative, that's how it would start, but that's not the kind of show we're watching here, and if you expected it to be that way, again, you don't know what show you're watching. This is much more in tune with what a show like Legion would do for its opening episode, and I really love the idea that we focus on this character of Switch throughout most of this. I thought that she, in general, added a lot to this show, and I liked that we didn't just get right into her helping out David, because definitely that is a part of it, but we do get to see a bit of her backstory. She's someone who is still a college student. She seems to be doing extremely well. She is from a very, as we can tell at least, a very wealthy family, but she doesn't have the greatest relationship with her father either. The most communication they seem to have is exchanges through like a FaceTime, but like on an old TV, which was just a really cool idea the way they did that. And there's, you know, just from this opening, there's already enough here that they can, you know, that they can definitely plant. They're planting the seeds for things I think they can feed into throughout the season. I think there's definitely a lot of stuff we can do with Tsai as a character, and I really was compelled by her. I like that this is someone who, you know, again, while she is doing very well in school, she clearly does have family troubles. She doesn't seem to have many friends or anything like that, but she has this gift. She has this gift of being this time traveler, and, you know, pretty much from there, we see that, you know, David wants her help. David wants someone who is a time traveler, someone who's going to be able to undo all of the damage, and considering where David has found himself, it makes sense why he wants that, because while he is turning dark, I think he genuinely does care about Division 3. He cares about Sid. He cares about, you know, both of the carries. He still cares about, you know, Clark and things like that. He still cares about these people. He wants to get back into their good graces, but he knows that there's a lot of bad blood there right now, and he knows that there's been a lot of damage, and he wants to do what he can to fix it, and Switch is the person that might be the best fit for that, and I think that was a really cool idea the way they get into that, and the scene especially where, you know, she gets that flyer and we see these little hints of, like, and I like they don't tell you at first that it's David. Like, of course we know that it's David, but it was almost as if you could have watched this, at least the first 20 minutes of this episode, without seeing a single episode of Legion prior, which I think was a really cool idea. I always love it when shows do that. I'm not saying you should go into this episode cold or anything, but let's say hypothetically you were. The show actually did a really good job with getting you into this main narrative, as you were, if you were, like, you know, overseeing Tsai's life, because she doesn't really know what's going on. We hear about this pregnant girl. We hear about someone who is adamant about time travel and things like that. And the way they really do clue you in into what's going on, I think, is really well done. Eventually, we realize that, yes, this is Lenny. Lenny is trying to reach out to Tsai and things like that, and that David has been looking for her. But for a while, we don't really know what that's all about, and I think they did a really good job with setting that up here. Now, once she does eventually track David down, we find out a couple things that I really was not expecting. Basically, Lenny has started this sort of hippie-esque sort of commune, and I really like the way they get us reintroduced to all this stuff through this character, Salmon, who we really just saw as we knew she was going to come back in some form, but I don't think we expected to see her to the extent that we do in this episode, because she's basically the one that reintroduces us to everything, shows us where Lenny is and things like that. And of course, Salmon, we know, is pregnant, and Lenny sort of had this fling with her, which, I'm interested in seeing how they do unpack that. But again, that's not what this episode's focus is about. She leads her through everything. She tells him about, she tells him about David and things like that, and how he's essentially, it seems like, is giving them this drug that makes them feel peace and love. So we don't really know what that's all about, but it seems to be a very peaceful existence. And I don't know if this is the beginning of, say, David starting some kind of uprising, but I'm inclined to believe that it is. I feel like at this point, he's just trying to get into their good graces, because he's trying to find some sort of community. Since there isn't a Division 3, he's using these people as sort of the alternative version. Like, if he can't have Division 3, he'll start his own community, and you definitely are seeing the beginnings of that for sure. And the way everyone kind of worships Lenny now is really great to see, too. The interactions between her and Tsai are great. I particularly loved when Tsai revealed that she is straight, and Lenny's like, oh, why? Like, she's legitimately perplexed as to why that is. I mean, that's just so Lenny right there, and I love stuff like that. But then the stuff that we are definitely hyped for, we get that meetup between David and Tsai, and it definitely was all kinds of awesome. I love all the way this played out. When David is talking about how, he had this monster in him for all these years, but now he's feeling better. He's feeling a sense of calmness. He's kind of trying to persuade her, it seems, into joining his group. I took this as he is very adamant about finding people. He's trying to get into her good graces as much as he can, and you're definitely seeing that here. I don't think David is as okay as he's saying he is. He's talking about how he's good now, but I think he just needed to say that to really just get her on his side as best as he can. She kind of talks about how her father has this interest in making robots as well, so I don't know if that's going to factor into this somehow, but clearly there's more going on there than we think, which is interesting. But basically, his main objective, like I said, is to change the past. He wants to do what he can to go back in time and undo all of this. Unfortunately, though, Summerland is... not Summerland. And again, they kind of give you all this exposition that we already do know, but again, it makes sense for this episode because the whole show is... the whole thing's supposed to be reintroducing you to this world, almost as if you were someone like Tsai, who is just completely unfamiliar to all of this. The only world that she knew up to this point is the one that she's in, with her father, who makes these robots and things like that, and, her going to school. So, seeing all this stuff again, well, most times I would complain, it being on Legion, it makes sense that they had to reintroduce us to all this stuff. But unfortunately, there really is no time to waste, as Division 3 is quickly on the move, and they do in fact corner David, and she is unable to save him. But what's great about that is we do get to see Tsai go back in time multiple times this episode, and it is really fucking cool the way they do it. I love the way this is done, because it's not your typical time travel stuff. It's not like she just gets in a machine or something like that. No, she draws this square, and then she crawls through it. That stuff is so cool, and I can't wait to see the way that is implemented in future episodes. Like I said, there's a lot that we're already seeing with this character, and I also did like how this cult kind of named her Switch. Like, she didn't have that name prior, but they named her Switch. I think that's definitely cool to see. I know that is her, typical name, but of course, in this episode, they basically referred to her as Tsai. We heard her called Switch a couple times, but she's mainly being referred to as Tsai right now. But I think there's so much potential with this character for sure. The stuff we got with her I thought was so well done. And she does eventually get to save David. And the last time that she does talk to him, he realizes that they really have no choice but just to get the hell out of there. Because no matter what they do, Division 3 is going to find him. He isn't going to come he isn't going to come out of this alive. So he just completely leaves. We don't know exactly where they went, but as far as we know, they have gone outside of this dimension. I'm gonna speculate that they're probably somewhere else. They're not even, they might not even be in this, it could be a completely different timeline. I mean, we don't really know where they are at this point, but I thought that was really cool. I love the way that was done, and I'm very excited to see them explore this relation more. There's already a lot that we can get out of this for sure, especially when it comes to Tsai, who seems to have access to all this technology and things like that. She is a time traveler. She's still clearly perfecting her abilities. You know, we don't know too much about that. We don't know how long she's been flirting with time travel and things like that. And you have David, who really is starting to become this leader that everyone's starting to worship. He's got this, you know, he's got this group and things like that. He's got Lenny. He's got this, you know, cult of sorts. And I'm excited to see the way all of that does play out here for sure. And seeing those two bonding, it definitely did not disappoint here. The rest of this episode, though, really leads me to my main problem with this episode, and that is that the last 10 minutes or so is completely different from everything else we've gotten. It almost feels like a different episode. The rest of the episode is just Division 3, kind of seeing where they stand, and while this is definitely important, I don't think we need to see it in this episode. The rest of the episode was so focused on Tsai and David and Lenny, I feel like the entire episode could have just been that. And I'm not saying that, again, this stuff is great. I love what we get here, but we could have waited till next week. I know there's only 8 episodes, and there's not a lot of time to get into this stuff, but they could have easily done this next week, have an entire Division 3 centric episode, and then I would have been fine with that. But what we do get here is definitely important. We see Sid and how gun-ho she is about going after David. She really doesn't want to waste any time here. She wants to neutralize this threat immediately, but then you have someone like Farouk, who I still do think is very much manipulating them. I still do not think Farouk is on their side very much at all. I think the only reason that he is helping them, you know, go after David is just to keep himself alive. And going after David, that's just an added bonus for him. Like, he's really just doing this to keep himself alive, to make sure he has those allies. And that's really all he cares about at the moment. And going after David, like I said, that's just something that he's wanted to do for a while. And he has people that want to go after him. So it's just an added bonus in that way. But the conversation he has with Sid, I really do love. I love when he talks about how, again, he still views David as his child, and he doesn't want him to die. He needs to keep him alive, and I'm interested in seeing really what Farouk's plan is, because I'm inclined to believe that there's something more going on there. There's definitely some sort of other ulterior motive that he has for David. I still do believe that he planned all this out, and that he still is manipulating all of them, like I said, and I'm interested in seeing really where that's going to go. But the stuff that's really shocking to me is what's going on with the Carries. The male Carry is now reanimating Pataname in a sense, but he's making a robot of Pataname who is only referring to himself as Mainframe, and this just felt a little bit shoehorned into me. I get it that you want to keep the character on there. I get it that you want to keep Jeremie Harris on as an actor because he's so great, and I personally want to see him there too, because I did not feel Pataname's death was that satisfying last year. I felt like there was a lot more untapped potential with that character. But this just felt a little bit unclear as to why they're doing this, and look, in a show like Legion, a lot of things are unclear, but this was just something where it came out of nowhere. There was nothing hinting at this happening in the previous season, so, I mean, I'm guessing we're going to hear more about it, but this just felt a little bit unclear to me overall. That being said, again, the stuff at the end where you see Sid and them trying to go after David, but them not being able to find him because he's just completely up and left with Tsai and all of them, and then you see just Sid and she sees all these, you know, different things of David and how upset she is about it. That stuff is great, and yes, that stuff is definitely very important for the story. I just did not feel in this episode we really needed it. And that really is my only flaw with this episode. Like, if I really had to have one thing that bothered me, that's really the only thing. This stuff is great. I love what we got here. I just don't think it really fit into this episode, and I think we should have focused on Tsai for the entirety. Now, in terms of visual style here, I mean, there's so much to talk about. You could really just use this episode as a way to just show how great Legion is when it comes to just unique storytelling. I mean, the way the episode starts off with the off-air, noise and things like that. I mean, no other show would do something like that. You thought it worked perfectly because it was almost like a different show at first with Tsai and us following her around. Her even having her own music, which I gotta say, I love the fact that she already has her own theme. I love the way that was done. That was definitely fantastic. But the scene that especially stuck out to me in terms of weird was the department store. I mean, again, there are scenes on like that in other shows, but never the way Legion has done it. I don't think we've seen a department store that is all white and that has, that has this just white background, and then all of the department store clerks, they just spontaneously burst out into song. It's so weird that it just works, and I love the way that was done with her eventually finding the cult. That stuff, it's so great. I love the way that was done, and that was definitely one of my favorite parts of the episode for sure. There's so much great visual flair, though, the backgrounds and things like that, the design on Tsai, I mean, that stuff, the show is just so stylish, and it has its great sense of just a real timeless feel. I've heard many people say, like, we don't know when the show is taking place. From this episode, it feels like it might be the 70s. It definitely feels that way with, like, the different fashions and things like that, but then if you look at Division 3, they're definitely not dressing that way, so that's the thing. I feel like Legion, it's in a show that is not a pre-existing time. I feel like it's a show that really is timeless in that way, and it's not overly concerned about appealing to a certain demographic. And that's something I've always adored about Legion, is that it is what it is, and it's not trying to be anything more than that, and I think they've done a very good job with that for sure, and that is something I'm gonna miss. I'm gonna miss this visual style, the flair that it has. There simply isn't anything like it on TV right now, and it's something that I just always appreciate when I watch the show. Like I said, I love the score, I love the way all that was done. And the pacing for this episode I thought was just great. It was slow, but to a point that wasn't boring. You wanted to know more about Tsai. You wanted to get as much of this character as you can, and I really love what we got to see with her. She honestly has potential to be one of the best characters in the show, and I think there's a lot of places they can take her for sure. The budding relation between her and David, I'm absolutely loving, but also David's headspace. Again, I do not think that he is as content as he is saying he is to Tsai. I think there's still a lot that is nagging at him. I think there's still a lot that he is going through. I think he is definitely trying to get back into the good graces of Division 3, and hopefully he does succeed at that. And I hope we also find out what Farouk's ulterior motive is, because regardless of if he is manipulating them or not, I do not think he is fully on their side. I think he has some sort of other plan, and I'm excited to see the way that plays out. Of course, Mainframe being in there as well, the new Ptonomy, I want to see what he brings to the table. There's just a lot of stuff they can do with this final season. Like I said, the whole show has kind of been, the whole script has been flipped, and there's a lot you can really do as a result of that, and I'm excited to see really where they do go within this season. They're definitely trying to explore, the confines outside of Division 3, and I think that definitely is really cool for sure. But I really did love this episode. It almost is one of the best of the show. It really is just those last 10 minutes that do hold it back for me. If you cut those 10 minutes out, this is a nearly perfect episode. It is a near perfect episode, but if you cut those 10 minutes out, this is honestly a perfect episode in my mind. So I am definitely going to give the season premiere of Legion, Season 3, Episode 1, Chapter 20, overall, in A. It feels so good to be reviewing this show weekly again. Honestly, like I said, as much as I loved reviewing Season 2, it's just not a show to binge. It really isn't. It's a show that you have to talk about on a week-to-week basis, and it's episodes like this that really get me to savor the moment and get me to just love everything that I'm watching and get me to, talk about it in the most coherent way possible. But either way, guys, in my review, the season premiere of Legion, let me know what you guys saw this episode overall. Left your thoughts on it. Did you like it? Did you not like it? Are you liking the direction direction they're going in. Are you excited to see how season 3 plays out? All that kind of stuff. But we'll see you guys in my next video, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.